By the time Daniel Reed reached gate 14 with his 8-year-old son asleep on his shoulder, his shirt was wet with sweat, his back ached, and his heart was already carrying more than most people could see. He only needed one thing that morning, to get on that plane. But 10 minutes later, in front of a line of strangers, an airline employee looked at him, then at his son, and said coldly, "Sir, you're not boarding this flight." Daniel stood still for a second, not because he did not hear her, but because he had no strength left for another problem. 3 years earlier, Daniel had lost his wife Lena to a sudden illness. Since then, his world had become very small and very heavy. Rent, groceries, school lunches, laundry, late-night fevers, unpaid bills, and a little boy named Noah who still asked questions Daniel could never answer without pain. Dad Noah would sometimes whisper at night, "Do you still talk to Mom?" Daniel would smile in the dark and say, "Every day." He worked as a baggage warehouse clerk in a small regional airport outside Chicago. It was not a bad job, but it was not enough either. Some weeks he chose between paying the power bill on time or buying new shoes for Noah. Most days he skipped lunch, so his son could take fruit in his school box. He never complained out loud. He just kept going. Then one evening, Noah came home from school pale and quiet. The school nurse said he had a fever. 2 days later, the doctor found something more serious, a breathing condition that needed treatment from a specialist in Seattle. The appointment had taken months to get, and missing it could delay care again. Daniel had sold his old guitar, borrowed money from a neighbor, and taken 2 unpaid days off to afford the trip. The ticket was cheap, non-refundable, and brutally early. He packed Noah's backpack himself, medicine, juice box, sweater, coloring book, and the small stuffed fox Noah still slept with at the airport. Everything went wrong. Security took longer. Noah started coughing. Daniel had to run, carrying one bag in his hand and Noah half awake in his arms. By the time they reached the gate, boarding was almost complete. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, trying to catch his breath. "My son has a medical appointment. Please, we're here." The gate agent barely looked at him. "Boarding is closed." Daniel stared at the screen. The plane was still outside. Passengers were still in line. "It's not closed," he said quietly. A man in a neat navy suit standing nearby glanced at them but said nothing. The agent's face hardened. "Sir, don't argue. Step aside." Noah lifted his head from Daniel's shoulder. "Dad, are we okay?" Daniel kissed his hair. "Yeah, buddy. I'm trying." He showed the appointment letter on his phone. "Please, I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking you to let us on the flight we paid for." The agent called a supervisor. The supervisor arrived, looked at Daniel's worn clothes, the old duffel bag, the tired child, and made a fast judgment. Policy is policy. Daniel's ears burned. People in line were watching now. Noah held tighter onto his neck. "Please," Daniel said, softer this time. "I can miss many things. I cannot miss this." The supervisor folded her arms. "If you continue creating a scene, security will be called." Daniel swallowed hard. He was not a man who shouted. Life had already taught him that shouting rarely fixed anything. But humiliation has a way of shaking even the quietest people. He took one step back and looked down at Noah. The boy's eyes were wide, confused, and afraid. And in that moment, Daniel felt something worse than anger. He felt failure. The man in the navy suit walked closer. He had silver hair, calm eyes, and the quiet presence of someone used to being listened to. "Excuse me," he said to the supervisor. "The child is unwell. The plane has not departed. Can an exception be made?" The supervisor gave him the tight smile. "Customer service workers save for strangers they do not intend to help. Sir, this is an operational matter." The man nodded once and turned to Daniel. "What's the appointment for?" Daniel hesitated. He did not like sharing his problems with strangers, but something in the man's face felt kind. "My son needs to see a specialist in Seattle," Daniel said. "We waited months." Noah started coughing again. Daniel bent down and rubbed his back. The man looked at the boy, then back at the staff. "Surely there is some solution." "There isn't," the supervisor said. "Not anymore." Daniel could feel the heat rising behind his eyes, and he hated it. He had promised himself, after Lena died, that Noah would not have to see him break. The boy had already seen enough sorrow for one childhood. "Come here, buddy," Daniel said. Kneeling, Noah leaned into him. "Did I make us late?" Daniel's face changed instantly. He held his son's cheeks in both hands. "No, never say that. None of this is your fault. But if I walked faster, Noah," Daniel's voice cracked. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong." The man in the navy suit looked away respectfully, giving them a little privacy. Daniel sat on the floor near the gate window with Noah in his lap. Outside, rain had begun to tap against the glass. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The gate was almost empty now. The employees had moved on. To them, Daniel and Noah were already yesterday's problem. That the man sat on the seat across from them. "My name is Arthur Bennett," he said gently. "Daniel, and this brave traveler is Noah," the boy answered quietly. Arthur smiled. "Good name," Daniel sighed. "I'll try to find another flight, maybe borrow more money. Maybe the clinic will understand." Arthur was silent for a moment. "Do you fly with this airline often?" Daniel gave a tired laugh. "I work around planes. but I can barely afford to ride one. Arthur studied him more carefully. What do you do? Cargo warehouse. Night shift mostly. At Midfield Regional. Arthur's expression changed slightly, as if something had clicked in his mind. Midfield Regional. How long? Almost 9 years. And your last name? Reed. Arthur sat back. Daniel noticed it. What? Arthur did not answer immediately. Daniel, did your wife's name happen to be Lena Walsh Reed? Daniel froze. Yes, he said slowly. How do you know that? Arthur looked toward the aircraft outside, then back at Daniel. Because I knew her father. Very well. Daniel blinked. Lena rarely spoke about her father. All Daniel knew was that they had been distant for years. He had been rich, stubborn, and deeply disappointed when Lena walked away. From a life of money and expectations to marry a man who fixed things with his hands and laughed too loudly in small apartments. He never wanted anything to do with me, Daniel said. Arthur folded his hands. That is not fully true. Daniel stared at him. Your father-in-law Charles Walsh founded this airline, Arthur said, years ago, before it became what it is now. Daniel frowned, confused. No, this airline belongs to a group, investors, board members. Arthur nodded. Publicly, yes, but control remained through family trust structures. When Charles passed away last year, a major controlling share transferred according to private legal instructions. He paused. To Lena's line. Daniel's voice dropped. Lena is gone. Arthur held his gaze. Which means, in the absence of your wife, her legal spouse and child became the direct beneficiaries. Daniel said nothing. The words made no sense. Arthur continued carefully. Daniel, unless the legal process was incomplete, you and your son are the controlling family owners of this airline. Daniel actually laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was impossible, sir. I live in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, he said. I have overdraft fees. I know how it sounds. No, you don't. Arthur reached into his jacket, pulled out a card, and handed it over. It read, Arthur Bennett, Senior Trustee, Walsh Family Holdings. Daniel's fingers trembled. Arthur spoke softly. We have been trying to locate you properly for months. Old addresses, old numbers, legal delays. I was traveling today for a board meeting. I never expected to find you like this. Daniel looked from the card to Noah, then back to Arthur. The child had fallen asleep against his chest. Even if what you're saying is true, Daniel whispered, it changes nothing right now. My son still needs that appointment. Arthur stood up. Then let's begin with what matters, he said. He walked to the counter. The same supervisor straightened her posture when she saw him approach. He said only a few quiet words. Her face lost its color. Within minutes, phones were ringing. Another staff member rushed over. Someone printed new boarding passes. Someone offered water. Someone apologized too quickly. The supervisor came to Daniel with a stiff smile. Mr. Reed, we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. We have arranged immediate boarding. Daniel did not stand. He looked at her for a long second and then said, 5 minutes ago, my son was just a tired little boy you were willing to leave behind. She lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. Daniel rose slowly, lifted Noah into his arms, and followed Arthur toward the gate. At the aircraft door, Noah stirred and whispered, Dad, are we getting on? Daniel pressed his forehead lightly against his son's. Yeah, buddy. We up. Then, as they stepped onto the plane, Daniel's phone rang from an unknown number. He answered in a daze. A formal voice said, Mr. Reed, this is Walsh Family Legal Counsel. We have been urgently trying to reach you. There are several matters requiring your immediate attention. Regarding your ownership position in Air. Daniel stopped walking. Ownership, position. The words hit him. Like a wave, he looked at Noah, asleep in his arms. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt not relief but fear of a different kind. Because if this was all true, then the life he had been barely surviving had just changed forever. And he had no idea whether that change would save them or swallow them. The Seattle appointment went well, but not perfectly. The specialist confirmed Noah's condition was serious, though manageable with the right treatment and regular follow-up. Daniel listened carefully, took notes twice, and asked every question a parent asks when love and fear are sitting in the same chair. When they returned home 2 days later, a black car was waiting outside his building. Noah looked up. Did we go to the wrong house? Daniel almost smiled. Nobody. I think life just got confused. Inside a downtown office the next morning, Daniel met lawyers, financial advisors, and board members who spoke in polished sentences and expensive words. They explained the truth piece by piece. Lena's father had quietly rebuilt his relationship with her through letters in the final year of his life, though he never got the chance to fully make peace. After Lena's death, he had changed his estate plan. Most of the controlling ownership of Skybridge Air had been placed in a trust for Noah and Daniel. Daniel sat there stunned. He thought of Lena folding baby clothes on their old sofa. He thought of the day she died, when she held his hand and whispered, "Take care of our boy." He thought of how alone he had felt. And now, somehow, she had still found a way to protect them. But the biggest shock was not the money, it was what Arthur showed him next. Complaints. Internal reports. Security footage. Stories. from employees and passengers describing rude treatment, discrimination, neglect of families, and arrogance at several airports. The very thing Daniel had faced at the gate was not a one-time failure. It was a culture problem hiding behind polished branding. One board member tried to soften it. "These are unfortunate but isolated." "No," Daniel said quietly. The room stopped. He looked around the long table. "It's not isolated if a tired parent with a sick child gets dismissed like he's nothing. It's not isolated if your staff only becomes kind after hearing a powerful name." Arthur watched him silently. Another board member leaned forward. "Mr. Reed, with respect, this is a complex corporation. You do not need to involve yourself in operations immediately." Daniel clasped his hands. The warehouse worker in him was still there. The man who loaded freight at 2 a.m., who cleaned spilled coffee from his own shirt before school pickup, who knew what it meant to be ignored. "Maybe that is the problem," he said. "Too many people leading this airline have forgotten what ordinary people look like." He went home that evening exhausted. Noah was doing homework at the kitchen table. "Dad," Noah asked, "are we rich now?" Daniel laughed softly and sat beside him. "Maybe, but that's not the important part." "Then what is?" Daniel looked at his son for a moment. "What we do next." That night he barely slept. He could walk away, sell what was his, and give Noah an easy life. No more bills, no more fear, no more night shifts. But every time he closed his eyes he saw gate 14. He saw Noah asking, "Did I make us late?" By morning, Daniel had made his decision. He did not step into the role as some dramatic hero. He did it as a father. At the emergency board meeting 1 week later, Daniel spoke simply. "I'm not here because I wanted power," he said. "I'm here because I saw what happens when people forget compassion. This airline carries human beings, not just ticket numbers. Families, sick children, workers, elderly travelers, people who are tired, scared, grieving, or trying their best. If we cannot treat them with dignity, then we do not deserve their trust." He kept Arthur beside him as an advisor. He kept experienced executives too, but only the ones willing to listen and change. He launched a full review of customer care training, family travel policies, medical travel assistance, employee conduct, and complaint response systems. Airport staff would now be judged not only on speed and performance, but on humanity. He also started something deeply personal, the Lena Reed Family Travel Fund, a program that helped low-income parents travel with children for urgent medical care. When the media learned his story, they wanted headlines about the secret owner and the single dad billionaire. Daniel refused to play that game. "I'm not interested in looking powerful," he told one reporter. "I'm interested in making sure no child feels unwanted at our gate." Months passed. Noah's treatment began helping. His cough eased. He smiled more. He even started drawing airplanes again, something he had stopped doing after his mother died. One afternoon, Daniel took Noah to the airport, not as desperate passengers this time, but just to watch planes take off from the observation area. Noah leaned against the railing and asked, "Mom would be happy, right?" Daniel looked at the sky for a long moment. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think she would." Then Noah asked the question only a child could ask. "Did all this happen because we missed the plane?" Daniel shook his head and smiled. "Nobody. It happened because we kept going even when life was hard." A few weeks later, Daniel returned quietly to gate 14. The same supervisor was there. She looked terrified when she saw him. But Daniel did not come for revenge. He came for closure. "I'm not here to punish you," he said. She swallowed. "I treated you badly." "Yes," Daniel said. "You did." Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry." Daniel nodded. "I believe you. Just remember next time, the person in front of you may be carrying more than a ticket. Be kinder before you know their name." Then he walked away. That evening, he picked up Noah, made grilled cheese for dinner, checked his medicine, signed a school paper, and sat at the edge of his son's bed until he fell asleep. The apartment was still small. Life was still busy. Grief still visited him sometimes, but something had changed. Daniel no longer felt like life had only taken from him. It had returned something: to a chance to protect his child, a chance to honor his wife, and a chance to turn pain into kindness for other families. And in the end, that mattered more than the airline, the money, or the title ever could.